should I have like a 0 for ready?
Welcome to Media Path. I'm Fritz Coleman.
And I am Louise Palanker.
Before we start the show, ladies and gentlemen, I know you've seen our set decoration that we've done here. This is very impressive. Weezy, for as long as she's been conscious, has collected really cool lunchboxes, and later on in the show, we're going to get you to give us a tour of some of your faves.
Some of them smell a little bit like sour milk. Is that...
That's okay.
All right.
You know, on Media Path, we're like your personal shoppers for media. We browse the web, bookstores, broadcasting cable networks, and streaming services to find content that might pique your interest while not wasting your time. We also have amazing, and in this case, hilarious guests. Today we're going to talk to comedian, author, playwright, and now talk show host Steve Bluestein. Steve and I go way back in the stand-up world, and he was around at the very beginning of the Los Angeles comedy wave in the 70s and 80s, and there's lots of people and lots of stories about that era. And he's a playwright and an author and an actor and a TV show writer and a producer, and he's going to be with us in just a minute. Weezy, what do you have this week?
I'm excited about that. Okay. So this week I watched Blue Miracle on Netflix. I think it's new to Netflix. It's by director Carlos Aguilar. It's starring Jimmy Gonzalez, Dennis Quaid, and Anthony Gonzalez. To save their cash-strapped orphanage, a guardian and his kids partner with a washed-up boat captain for a chance to win a big fishing contest cash prize. Jimmy Gonzalez plays a once-orphaned street kid who is healing his own heart through the love he pours into the kids at the orphanage he now runs in Cabo San Lucas. Here's where the formula kicks in hard. Omar needs money to keep the place open. They all enter a fishing tournament with Dennis Quaid as the grizzled, angry former champ, saddled with the ragtag band of misfits. Everyone pulls together, finding their strength in a shared effort. You've seen this movie before when it was called Bad News Bears, The Mighty Ducks, Little Giants, Cool Runnings, Hoosiers, The Sandlot, fill in the blank. But this time, the water and sky are very blue. The people in this Mexican town occasionally even speak Spanish. There's a dose of religious symbolism with a co-starring role for a nail, and Dennis Quaid is especially grizzled, and I just kind of liked it.
That was the best review I ever heard.
What have you been watching?
Well, this is a revisitation.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you talked about Mare of Easttown, but I hadn't seen it yet. And I didn't realize how personally connected to me
and also when I reviewed it, because the way that HBO rolls things out, it dribbles and drabs, and they don't just land the whole season. They do a couple at a time.
No,
so there's more to discuss.
2 days after it's been on HBO, they do roll the whole thing out on Prime, which I did, and I binged it over a couple of days.
Well, now that it's all finished, they roll the whole thing out. But back when I talked about it, I had only seen 2 episodes. So we have much to discuss.
Right. All right. Well, my first selection, Mare of Easttown, originally on HBO, now streaming on Prime. Mare as in M-A-R-E, as in her name, Mare Sheehan. She's a detective in Easttown Township, Pennsylvania. This is an actual town west of Philadelphia in Delaware County. More on that in a second. This show, I always have to compare stuff as a way of describing it. It's kind of a darker, grittier Bosch. She's a detective whose life is a shit show. All sorts of ongoing family issues, but somehow she stays devoted to crime solving and justice. Some of the crimes she investigates involve her own family members by marriage, so there's lots of emotional jeopardy, chock full of breathtaking twists and turns, loaded with all the frustrations of blue-collar America that we're all experiencing right now. Great realism in writing. Beautiful photography, just enough cool forensics to keep crime fans glued, an amazing cast, including Kate Winslet as Mare, Guy Pearce as a college professor, writer, and kind of a suitor for Mare, Jean Smart as Mare's mother in a really wonderful role. The smiles and laughs in this show, when they do come rarely, she is usually on screen. Julianne Nicholson, who I became a huge fan of after her turn in August Osage County, and a really nice discovery, Weezy, Sosie Bacon, who is the daughter of Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon. She's a really gifted actor, a chip off the old family block. Yeah. There's 7 episodes. There's a big discussion because of the popularity of this series about whether they'll have a season 2. They're still talking about it. They haven't decided yet. Here's why I love this show. The series was shot mainly on location in the actual Easttown Township in Pennsylvania, which is 2 miles from where I grew up.
Really?
I grew up in a town called Wayne, Pennsylvania. I actually went to high school for 1 year at Conestoga High School, which is in Easttown Township. All the names they used in the dialogue are genuine city names. They talk about Valley Forge. That's where I used to sled as a kid. They talk about Brandywine Park, where a hideous crime takes place. It's a beautiful place. The miracle is they were religious about duplicating the odd southeastern Pennsylvania dialect. Now, the creator and writer Brad Inglesby was from a town called Berwyn, which is right next to the town I grew up in. He went to Villanova University, which is right down the street. It's a really odd accent, and you can hear it with me if I'm tired or angry. Water is water, and don't, and where you going. When I get tired, it rears its ugly head. But Kate Winslet and a young woman that plays her daughter are British, and they nail this dialect, as do the other characters. After the last of episode 7, there's a little mini doc about the making of this series, including the cast discussing the weird accent. Really fun being a native of that area.
Oh, that's really cool, Fritz. I didn't realize how closely you had grown up to that town. It's an interesting town, and it's a lot like a lot of towns, I guess, where everyone is either related or sleeping with each other, or both.
Seriously.
Or it could be a combination of the two.
I'll tell you need to wait until the crimes start to occur before you write it off, because the first 15 minutes you're going, this is just a hugely dysfunctional family and I can't sit through this. But then after they sort of get in there and some of these crimes occur, then it gets really interesting.
And everyone's kind of working on something. And I really, I admire that in humans when they're digging in and they're working on trying to do better, know better, do better, and address. I mean, there's some scenes in therapy offices. There's people that are struggling with some stuff, and they're trying to make progress for the sake of kids and for the sake of themselves. Great
realism. That's the reason I mentioned it's sort of the blue-collar America that we're all experiencing right now, people just trying to make it. A great show. And this thing is hugely popular. People are, that's why they're sort of negotiating to bring back a season 2. They hadn't planned on it. Kate Winslet wants to do it, but they're getting a lot of eyeballs on this show.
The thing that you learn, though, is that murder can really disrupt the therapeutic process.
That's very true.
So it sets you back a few steps, but it's really it's such good acting. Yeah. It's just such good acting. Okay, so Fritz, have you watched The Morning Show?
No, but everybody's telling me about it. But I'll tell you a story about that when you're done.
So we started watching The Morning Show. Well, we had watched 1 or 2 episodes, and then we were like, everyone in our family was like, go back, finish it. All right, so this series on Apple Streaming Plus is an inside look at the modern workplace through the lens of the cast and staff of a popular morning show. The show explores vital themes that are deeply woven into male and female dynamics playing out in wherever we may work, but the tensions are magnified when your workplace is televised across America via a high-profile morning show. In this series, Me Too has just exploded at the fictional UBA network as morning show host Steve Carell takes the hit for systemically toxic male behavior throughout the network. His co-host, played by Jennifer Aniston, very publicly places Reese Witherspoon as an unknown young female journalist in his seat. It's fascinating to Google the show and read as conflicted critics grade it poorly while avidly devouring every episode. This could be because it's a delicious, soapy look at the bigger-than-life world of rich New York celebrities while being a slightly inept look at an important, multi-layered topic. But I will argue that as over-the-top as it may be, it is asking us to explore complex questions about the intersexual dynamics in our own lives. If you would like to learn more about what launched the Me Too movement in a just as riveting, but yes, this really did happen way, then check out Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow, which is very modernly both a podcast and a book. And it chronicles Ronan's dogged hunt for clues and witnesses in the crimes of Harvey Weinstein while running up against the systems that protect powerful men accused of terrible crimes in Hollywood, Washington, and beyond. And I also recommend the Chasing Cosby podcast from the LA Times. So those are real, that's real life. And if you think that morning show is kind of over the top, this is really what happened.
So here's my morning show story.
Okay.
First of all, that show was just being completed in its production and its writing when the Matt Lauer issue happened at NBC. And they needed a weatherman. So Issei Morales, the really wonderful Latin American actor, came over and hung out with me for a few days on the set of the NBC studio to just sort of get the mechanics of working in a chroma key and how it worked. Could not have been more charming, and gave me this amazing box of baked goods as a thank you when it was done. But he said, this is going to be really interesting to see how people react, because it's like, today's news, Me Too, Matt Lauer type material going on in there. I have not seen it yet because, of course, I can't get Apple TV yet, but I will.
Well, when Ronan was exploring the Harvey Weinstein landscape and meeting up against resistance at NBC, where he worked at MSNBC, it was because they were really trying desperately to keep a cap on the whole Matt Lauer situation.
Exactly, yeah.
So it really is.
And the dust from that whole thing is not settled over there either. Great selection. All right, so here's a documentary streaming on Netflix called The American Meme. This is a doc about social media stars Paris Hilton, Josh Ostrovsky, Brittany Ferlin, and Kirill Bekutsky, and how they hustle to build their online media empires with hundreds of millions of followers, and how they face the pitfalls of fame. This film is interesting and very disturbing. At the end, you'll be certain that we have inched closer to the apocalypse. Everybody's aware of Paris Hilton's rise to fame. She's pre-Kardashian in this new genre of being famous for no apparent reason. She's an ongoing thread throughout the movie. This whole thing is about what happens when you pour gasoline on narcissism. This obsessive quest for views and likes, how insane money is made by these online influencers. Now, the most fascinating character is this guy, Kirill, who was born in Russia. He and his family escaped and came over to the U.S., and he stages events that he records on TikTok and Facebook, the happenings, digital raves, I guess you could call them. You watch praying that your own daughter never ends up in one of his videos. Over and over again, shots of girls getting topless and being gagged with champagne bottles, being bathed in champagne. His whole scene is like Caligula on ecstasy.
Where's Ferdy Arbuckle with a warning shot across the bow?
Exactly. If you're a parent, these images will haunt your dreams for weeks. What makes this film interesting is that it brings into view what we already wonder about. How far down the dark road with social media are we? How close to the abyss are we? It's disturbing and fascinating.
It is, because I guess fame or attention is a human instinct. We need to be validated, but it also can be a drug. Like anything that we need air, we need water. I don't think too much air has ever been a problem. But the things that we need, food, attention, those things can become an addiction.
Did you watch it?
No, I'm going to watch it based on your...
You should. And I'll tell you, there's sort of a sweetly sad moment. And that is that Paris Hilton, whoever's doing the interview, asks her why this is all important to her. She says, because all my many fans, and she calls them Hiltonettes or Parisonians or something.
Sure.
She says, my fans don't judge me. They just love me for who I am. And what she was reflecting on was how badly she was judged when she first got famous and people just put her down.
Or for how her parents treated her.
Yeah,
aren't we all just reacting to that at the end of the day?
Yeah. So
which brings us to Steve Bluestein. Right?
All right.
Because
let me introduce this great guest. This man's been a stand-up comic since the 70s. He's worked in Vegas and Tahoe and Reno and Atlantic City. Anywhere there are showrooms being run by guys with shiny suits and lots of vowels in their last name, this guy has worked there. He's written for television, including for Norman Lear. I can't wait to talk about that with him. He's produced television shows. He's a wonderful playwright. He won the Chameleon Theater Circle Playwrights Award for his play When One Is Gone. He was a finalist in the Palm Springs Playwrights Festival. He's written 3 books, Point of Pines. I love this title, Memoir of a Nobody, and Take My Prostate, Please. He's got his own talk show on YouTube called Let Me Say This About That. A very funny man, Steve Bluestein. Hello to the Coachella Valley.
Hello. How are you guys? Let me just say, I just saw that movie about the fishing thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was good. and I own that shirt, Fritz.
Oh, you do?
Oh, wow.
I have that shirt.
We've bonded on so many levels already. This is
Yeah,
wonderful.
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Good
So
to see you, my friend. Go ahead.
I read
Sure.
over the weekend. I read Point of Pines, and so
Oh.
I have a lot of questions. But before I get to them, we have found the pines on Google Earth. Thomas, if you can click on that, because you went back and you said a lot has changed, and maybe not just so much about change, but also because it's coastal and things just change. You
Right.
know, so a lot of the change had nothing to do with people destroying it. It could have been Mother Nature or us destroying the planet Earth. But maybe we could go down the street where you learned how to ride your bike, and you could, point out some highlights.
Great.
What
I
is
would
this?
love
Tory
that.
pines, or what pines are we talking
Yeah,
about?
explain where it is.
Point of Pines is just outside of Boston, and it's in Revere, Massachusetts. And it's a neighborhood in Revere. Revere sort of has, landlocked areas, and then it has this area which is a point and is surrounded by water on, I guess, 3 sides. It's not a peninsula, but it's sort of rounded. And that's where I grew up every summer at the Point of Pines.
And you would spend all summer there, or just parts of the summer?
Parts of the summer. Whenever we could get away, we were at the Pines because they were, the people there were like family to me.
Okay, so
And-
take a look, Stephen. Show us around.
All right.
Look at that.
Look
Is
at
that-
that.
is that
I
your
wish
street?
I could see it. I
Oh.
wish I could see it.
Oh, it's Witherby Avenue in Revere, Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see
It's a
you.
beautiful street.
you're on
Very
your-
sort
you're
of
on your
middle
bike.
American, beautifully maintained houses.
It's very middle America.
New England
there-
clapboard houses.
There's a house there. I can't see what you guys are looking at.
Okay.
There's a house there that's sort of aluminum siding, brown, a light tan, with a parking lot between it and the house next to it. And if you're going down the street, would be on your right-hand side. Anyways, that's the house that I grew up in.
And the way
Every
that you
summer.
described it, it was very much designed for the communal experiences and events and bonding, and everybody just kind of sitting out and enjoying the summer together.
Exactly. It was 2 families. The house was like a commune where everybody had their own home, but they were always together. And outside was just a party. Always a party outside.
And
They even created this gigantic patio between the 2 houses, where it encased another house into this commune. It was amazing.
So
It
explain what was so different about being there from being in your own nuclear family home.
All right. So my family was, if you look under dysfunctional you see my family. They were divorced. They got divorced. They were violent. My father was violent against my mother. My mother was a bitch. And, let's say it like it is. And they were too busy fighting with each other to take care of me. They took care of my physical needs, clothes, food, doctors, that was taken care of. But emotionally, I was left on my own. And the Point of Pines was the antithesis. They were warm, loving people who taught me what a family should be and included me. And because I was an only child, so I took the brunt of everything that was going on in that household.
And they weaponized you. They used you. You were not just collateral damage. You were actually used as a weapon.
Right,
And-
exactly. You tell your father this, tell your mother that. And I was right in the middle. And finally, a child psychologist sat me down and said, you tell your parents to fight their own battles and leave you out of it. It was the first time anybody had ever said to me, you have rights.
Mhm.
You don't have to be part of this. And so the 2 families in the Pines, they were an extended family. There was cousins and neighbors. And suddenly I was in a group that I wasn't judged, because in my own family, all I was judged. My my mother's family hated my father's family. My father's family hated my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I was collateral damage in that because when I was with my father's family, even though they were pretending or including me, I always felt this distance, and I could never let my guard down. That's not what happened at the Point of Pines. At the Point of Pines, I let my guard down, and I was just a child.
Well, you should know, Steve, that Fritz had a similar childhood, not, completely parallel, but you were both kind of only children who were boys, so that you were sort of like the lone carrot in a boiling pot of soup. And, and Fritz can describe what he experienced.
No, that's true. I was just saying that what you said resonated with me. I was an only child too. My mother's father hated my mother's family hated my father's family and vice versa. And when my mother and father no longer got along, which was 25 years before he passed away, and that was the end of their marriage. And I was very similar to my father. He was a great dry wit, and I looked like him. And because I was so similar to my father, my mother had this subconscious resentment of me.
Yeah.
And it was like I was the lightning rod, and I was the more vulnerable way for her to take out her anger about my father. It was really an interesting psychological dynamic.
That is exactly what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And, I always, even as a child, had a sense of humor. And I would be making people laugh around the kitchen table, and my mother would say, "A clown. I'm raising a clown."
Oh my God!
So I never, and to the day she died, she never came to a single show I saw. Not one. Not a single show I did. Not one. She never said. She actually said, when I finished writing Memoir of a Nobody, she actually said in front of people, "What did you write a book for? Nobody cares about your life."
So something was very threatening about this to her.
What does your father do for a living?
My father worked for his brother, my uncle, and they worked. They had a stationery store, and to this day, I can't go by Staples without buying something. I have enough pens. I have enough pens in my house. We could rewrite the Declaration of Independence 127,000 times with the pens I have.
You have a situation very similar to Johnny Carson, which some of his comic energy, not all of it, but some of it came from his desire to please and entertain his mom, who was not to be entertained or pleased. And regardless of whatever he did for her, I mean, and I don't know if you read Henry Bushkin's book about him. He gave her an around-the-world cruise, and she never said thank you. He could not make this woman happy, and it was the cause of all of his angst for most of his life.
Yeah, because you don't know how to stop trying.
Yeah.
When it's your mom.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it took years and years and years. And do you want to hear, this is a true story. I was sitting in a doctor's office in the waiting room with a friend, and I was on one side and there was a woman stranger on the other side. And my friend and I were talking about my mother and what was going on that week. And there was a lull in the conversation, and the woman reached over and said, "I'm sorry. I don't want to eavesdrop, but I can't help but hear what's going on." She said, "I just want to tell you that if a mother says there's something wrong with the child, then there's something wrong with the mother."
Oh, that's so good.
That's perfect.
And it hit me like someone took a shovel and hit me in the face with it, because that summed it up in a nutshell.
Wow.
And my life turned around at that point from that moment on, because then I realized when my mother would, give me this venom, I realized it's not me, it's her.
Mm-hmm.
And
it takes a long time for a child to get to that point where you're.
And those women live forever. They won't die.
Mine lived to be 96.
Lived till 94.
See?
See what I mean?
Yeah.
I always said controlling people will choose the time and place of their demise. That's exactly what my mother did. She said, "No, I'll go when I'm ready."
Well, here's an interesting thing about being an only child. It has its good side and its bad side. The good side is You could put me in solitary confinement for the rest of my life. I would be perfectly happy. I would play with the bugs. You know, I draw on the wall.
I'm exactly like that. To this day, I'm still like that.
I can entertain myself. The other side of the coin is I always wanted a brother or a sister, someone to share this grief with. But as an adult, I realized that if I had a brother or a sister, they would probably be as screwed up as I was, and then I would be dealing with that. So I'm very happy to be an only child.
Yeah, that's a good. That is a good point.
No, absolutely.
They clearly, both of your parents clearly did not have the ability to comprehend or feel the damage they were inflicting on you. So they were broken as children, and you described to a certain extent your grandparents, but your heart and compassion are fully functional. Was it Point of Pines that nurtured that in you, or are you just wired differently than your folks?
You know what? I suffered so as a child that I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. So I had a lot of therapy, a lot. There are entire homes with wings that were built on my therapy. We call this the Bluestein suite, and so I'm very aware of that perception is not reality. Even though it feels like reality, it's not reality. And I try to make people understand that how they feel is not actually what's happening. It's just a reaction to what's happening.
If you didn't have humor, you'd be really screwed up, Steve. I'm telling you.
Well, I struggled terribly in the beginning at the Comedy Store because I came from the May Company. Most of these people had been doing comedy for a long time. Like Pat Proft was in Minneapolis, and he was at Dudley Riggs and Bo Caprell. They came schooled. I was, brand new. So, and being so insecure, it was horrible until, the night it changed was John Savage was a friend. And he came to the Comedy Store one night, and I had been bombing. And he came to the Comedy Store, and he watched my act, and he said to me, "You're really good." He said, "You're an actor." He said, "Do you understand that?" And that was the first positive feedback I got. And from that moment on, I never bombed again.
Wow.
I mean, I bombed in front of big audiences, but not the way I was doing.
You just needed to be substantiated. That's a great story. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that phase. You mentioned Pat Proft because you were back at the beginning of the Comedy Store after Mitzi took it over and part of the first Comedy Store Players, which were the first improv group there, and Pat Proft. And talk about some of the other famous people that came out of that original group.
Well, all right. So I was there even before Mitzi took it over. As a matter of fact, Mitzi asked me to come, Mitzi Shore, who was the owner of the Comedy Store. She asked me to go to the meeting in which Sammy agreed to give Mitzi the store. So I was there. That's how early on I was.
Wow.
And in the beginning, let me listen, I'm old now, so names are hard.
I'm with you.
Hold on. Craig T. Nelson, Barry Levinson, Cliff Wilson, Red Fox. These were people that came in to hang out and just stand on stage at the Comedy Store. But in the Comedy Store Players, the original four that I saw were Pat Proft, Archie Hahn, Valerie Curtin, and Gary Austin. And the first night I walked into the Comedy Store, I saw them and I approached Valerie and I said, I've never done this. Are there any classes I can get into? And she said to me, I think Gary is starting a class. So I approached Gary and I said, "Can I join your class?" And he said, "Sure." And that class became the Groundlings.
Oh, wow.
Man.
I was in the first show the Groundlings ever did with Valerie and Archie, the three of us and a bunch of
So this
other
is before they had their own stage down Melrose Avenue. They were working at the Comedy Store.
we used to drive to Vermont to a little theater called a little theater called the Cellar Theater, and that's where we learned. And Jack Sue from Flower Drum Song, and Barney Miller. He was Are we live? Is that person?
We have
walking?
7 or 8 producers that are just walking by on their own will
okay.
here. We can't stop them.
Yeah, Jack Stu was in this class, and I learned the basics of improv from Gary Austin in this little theater downtown, and it was an amazing time.
You know, your self-esteem, I mean, you came out of this bad family situation, but your self-esteem must have been fairly hardy, because anybody that can do improv, I bow in their direction. To me, that's like nude hang gliding. It just seems so hard. And
well, you know what? I think it was stupidity on my part. I didn't know it was hard. I just learned how to do it.
Well, I think if you're clever and if you're talented at it, there's this group energy that kind of lifts everybody up. And so I think that was perfect for Steve at that time in his life.
Yeah.
Well, I also learned how to use it in my stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
I was standing on stage, I think it was at the MGM Grand, and I was opening for maybe it was Donna Summer. I don't remember. And it was 3,000 people in the main room. And I was doing my act, and I stopped, and I just looked at the audience, and I said, if I have to say these words one more time, I'm going to kill myself. And I looked down at the woman in the front, and I said, what do you do? And we started bantering back and forth. And I used all my improvisational skills working with this, and that's how I started talking to the audience.
You're a brave performer, because I remember one of the last times I saw you do stand-up, it was at Igby's, which was a fantastic room on the west side that closed after the L.A. riots. But you used to go up on stage with a stack of 3x5 cards and just read your jokes right up the 3x5 cards. Oh, he's going to get his 3x5 cards.
Steve is
but
going
I
to
always
get
thought
the
that took maximum
Oh, my
guts.
goodness. What have you got? What's fresh?
Now, they're a little bigger now. Now they're 8x5s or whatever the hell.
I'm working. Don Barnhart asked me to come to Vegas to work his club. And I said, Don, no, Don. No, I haven't done stand-up in so long. I can't do it. And he said, yes, you can. He says, I don't care if you bomb every night. I just want to see you on stage again. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay. And then I went, what have I done? Because I lost my 3x5 cards to move. So I had no idea what my act was. And so I started writing a whole new act about moving to the desert and all this other stuff. And I started with my 3x5 cards, and I'm going to use them in Vegas.
Do you want to try?
Really brave.
Do you want to try something on us?
Well, when I was selling my house in Los Angeles, I had a real estate broker, Sadell Berkowitz, with "Screw you, real estate," and it says right on the card, "If we can't sell your house, screw you." Sadell would say, "You've got such a special home here. It's so special. I love everything you've done with this house. It's because it's special. Look how special this house is." A year later, it hasn't sold. I said, Sadell, what's going on? She said, well, it's so special. Who could live here?
You wrote for Joan Rivers, right?
Yes,
So did I. I wrote for Joan Rivers for 10 minutes for $10 a joke.
I sold Joan Rivers jokes.
Yeah, everybody
all three
did.
of us. Everyone in town knew
the
she was
joke about
buying.
Joan Rivers was, and you probably were you a staff writer or were you just like a piecemeal writer? Like
we had the same manager,
oh.
So I would just throw her jokes whenever I could.
So you would write a joke for Joan Rivers. She was the cheapest person in show business. She'd pay you $10 a joke, but then she'd send you a 12-page legal document to sign, and the paper was worth more than the $10.
Yeah.
Well, the two jokes that I love that I wrote for Joan Rivers was, she said, I took Elizabeth Taylor to McDonald's. She got stuck in the arch.
That's a good joke.
And she was doing it. I'm getting older jokes. I'm getting older. And she said, my vagina is so dry, I douche with a dustbuster.
The one that I remember selling her, and my memory could be way off on this, was that I was so ugly when I was born. The doctor kept yelling, push, push. And my mother was like, I'm pushing. And she said, I'm talking to the nurse. Something like that.
Yeah.
There were, just like, I'm so ugly. I'm so this. My boobs are falling. Like, it was just plug in punchline.
Fun, though. I want to talk about Boston because you mentioned Point of Pines. How far from Boston was that?
Let me just tell you, I was born in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And to give you an idea how close to Boston it is, Logan Airport's parking lot is in Chelsea, Mass.
Oh, wow.
I only bring it up because so many talented comics have come out of there, and out of Emerson College in particular. Leno, I guess, went there, right?
Yeah, I went there.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I'm mentioning it. Otherwise, it would be a pointless comment. But Dennis Leary, Wendy Liebman, I think, went to Emerson, right?
And Norman Lear.
And Norman Lear went to Emerson. What a hotbed of talented, funny people.
Well, all this comedy stuff started way after I had left Boston.
Oh.
Because I graduated college in 68, and the Comedy Store opened in 71. And so I was in Los Angeles at that time. And the comedy boom in Boston was a result of what we were doing in Los Angeles because, people don't know this, but every comedy club in the country that you go to, the basic factory is based on what Mitzi's structure.
Absolutely.
Bud Friedman had the first club. There's no two ways about it. Because I went to his club in New York City in 1968 because I wanted to see the Ace Trucking Company. Ironically, I became a part of the Ace Trucking Company many years later. But the Improv was mainly a place where the theater kids would go after the theaters.
Yeah,
closed.
talk about that. That was cool. I mean, the people who were performing on Broadway after the show went down at night, they'd go in there and do a comedy or a song.
They do singing and comedy and sketches and it was everything. It was variety. Sammy Shore wanted a place where he could be showcased. The Comedy Store started so Sammy could be showcased because he was Elvis's.
Yeah, for 20 years. He wrote a great book about that called Second Banana, and it was really wonderful about being how hard it is to be an opening act.
Right. And so that's what happened. And what happened was that everybody else got work out of the Comedy Store but Sammy.
Yeah.
And that's why he lost interest.
So what are the elements of a good, successful, highly functional comedy club that Mitzi put in place that she understood were essential?
Focus.
Okay.
Number one, focus. That means dark room, stage with lights where the act is and all the attention is toward the stage. Now, you mentioned Igby's. Igby's was a good comedy room, but it had its detriment, which was it had a mirrored ceiling and the lights on stage bounced off that ceiling and lit the audience.
I didn't even think about that. That's a great point.
And
Plus, the bar was back there and the blenders would go off just before a punchline.
Exactly. And Mitzi moved the bar outside of the room. She painted the room black and she instituted the light, which, even as a professional, I still look for the light.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when to get off unless somebody tells me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the light is you get lit at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever.
And she was so married to a black environment that she made it in her house black environment because all the furniture in her house was black as well.
But you have to seat people close together. People laugh better if they're sharing the laughter. The ceiling needs to be low so that the sound stays contained. You have to mandate no talking. Sometimes I've performed in clubs where it's like, well, these people bought steaks so they can talk and put their back to the audience. No, because they're ruining the show for everyone around them. So go ahead, Steve.
When I was brand new, the second thing ICM sent me out was a show at the Doral Hotel in Miami. And I got on stage and I'd been working and, silence, absolute silence. The flop sweat starts and I get off the stage and I'm completely suicidal. And there was a comic in the audience. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the old school comics. He comes running after me, He says, hey, kid, what? You are wonderful. I said, wonderful, I just bombed. He said, are you kidding? They're all eating dinner. You can't fight the fork.
I know.
And from that moment on, I will not work in any environment where people are knife and forking it.
Wow.
Hand foods are okay,
right?
Because they can still look up at you. But if you got the knife and the fork, then they're down in their plates and they're not looking at you.
Yes, hand food.
A great venue is the upper room at Vitello's. I don't know if you've ever worked there. It's beautifully done. It's a great sound system. The only drawback is that they serve full-on entrees, and it's really disconcerting because you have no sense of how you're doing.
Well, doesn't Mike Lacey serve entrees too, though?
What's that?
And he's got a great room.
He does, but I think Steve will back me up on this. I think he serves his food before the show starts.
Yeah.
Well, any show in Vegas, the food is served, the dishes are cleared, and then all the drinks come out at once. If there's a 4-drink minimum, you get 4 drinks. They put them down. You pay your bill. Done.
Mm-hmm.
The Ice House, which I loved because it has every element of a perfect room.
Mm-hmm.
Small, low ceiling, hardwood floors, audience packed in tight.
Slight incline from the front to the back of the room.
Finger
Slight
food.
incline from the front to the back. But at the end, at 3/4 of the way into the headliner's act, they flood the room with the check.
Yeah,
oh, God.
No, I always hated that.
And then everybody's looking at the check and did you have the beef and where's the tacos and I didn't, and they're not paying attention to you.
No, and you're going into your big closer at that time of the night. Nobody's paying attention.
Just when you should be peaking, because my act was built. Just when you should be peaking, it drops off,
right?
And then you have to build up again. And and so what I started doing was saying to Bob Fisher, who owned the Ice House, I don't want a headline here anymore. I'll middle. And because George Miller told me that. He says, I don't headline there anymore. How can you fight that? So George was the middle. I said, well, if George is going to middle, I'll middle.
And that was always a problem on the first show because they were so worried about turning the audience over. So they brought the checks out like 2/3 of the way into the show.
Yeah.
The second show, you could tell them to hold off until the end. Crazy.
I think you guys have the chops to run your own club.
Oh, no, I don't. Steve does.
Listen, let me just tell you, I would rather inject iodine in both eyes than have to deal with comedians. Thank you.
Oh, no.
All right, so we want to hear some good comedy stories, but let's talk about the generation above you. So when you started going to comedy clubs and hanging out there and making friends and peers and stuff, who were the people that you ran into that had preceded you that you looked up to that you have some interesting stories?
David Brenner.
Okay.
See, this is the old age. I'm talking about this on stage.
Freddie Prinze?
No, Freddie was after me. Freddie was younger. From Dave Kaplan.
Steve Landesberg?
Steve Landesberg, right. They were all ahead of us. They, the Impressionist helped me.
Fred Travellino?
No, Fred was
Rich Little.
Rich Little, but there was a comedian.
Frank Gorshin?
That's it.
There
Frank
you
Gorshin.
go. Good one, Weezy.
I watched a lot of Mike Douglas.
They all came in, and Flip Wilson, like I said, Red Fox. But the truth of the matter is, the comedy boom didn't really actually start until Jimmy Walker got his deal with Tandem, which was to not only was he being paid a salary, but he was given 5 or 6 writers who were writing material for him. And he would take that material and try it out at the Comedy Store at the height of his TV fame with, Dynamite.
Yeah, and Tandem.
Plus, it was Carson moving out here, right? Because then the comic.
Talking about that's the shift of show business to the West Coast.
Right.
I'm talking about the comedy boom when people said, let's go to a comedy club.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And Mitzi would showcase, make sure that Jimmy was on at 9 o'clock at the peak and 11 every week. And she would advertise that he was going to be there. And people came in droves to see Jimmy. And Jimmy brought Richard Pryor, and then all hell broke loose.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then the crowds were packing, I remember standing outside of the Comedy Store and just seeing the smoke pouring out like the building was on fire. People smoking.
But it didn't run like it runs now, where you had lots of lower and mid-level comics first and then the big acts at the end. It sounds to me like it was just a place where pre-established guys got a chance to work out.
Well, that was how it was in the beginning. And then when Mitzi took it over, she started developing comics. She found Yakov Smirnoff.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Steve, wait till you see this guy. And I said, a Russian? And she said, yeah, nobody's doing that. And she was right. He's had an incredible career.
Mm-hmm.
And she could find talent. She could also kill talent. Like she would say to some of the women, you ought to work in all yellow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so,
I talked about that with Elaine Boozler, but you might have a better opinion or a more objective opinion, because Elaine, who was really classy about the way she answered the questions, wouldn't give it up that Mitzi really made it tough on female comics and relegated them up to the belly room and all that other stuff. What was it like?
When I heard about the belly room, there were no female comedians working. There was Robin Tyler and her partner. There was Elaine, but she came later, and she had been working in New York, and she came to LA to be showcased. And there was even
Lotus Weinstock.
Lotus was later.
Oh.
This is all. Lotus was developed by Mitzi, and I heard that Mitzi said she wanted the women to have their own room because there weren't that many comedians, and she was developing a place for them. Now, that being said, it was a horrible room. It was tiny, and people were going into the belly room waiting to get into the main room.
It was a holding tank.
Yeah, it was a holding tank. So they weren't really a legitimate audience, but she did give women a chance. And now, there are just as many women comics as there are men. Yeah. And when you talk about comedians and talent and stuff, you have to realize that you're dealing with ego. Mm-hmm. Every comedian who worked the Comedy Store thinks they should be a headliner. Mm-hmm. So if Mitzi says no, there's the resentment.
Yeah.
Were you running into a lot of people and sharing your childhood stories, or what had motivate you to go into comedy, to standing on a stage and saying, please love me? Did you find that people had just natural ability to be funny and a healthy childhood, or did you find that people had been overcoming something and had developed their sense of humor as a survival mechanism?
Well, it's interesting because I was once sitting at a table with a bunch of comedians, and I said, who had a happy childhood? And not one of their hands went up.
Okay.
Every one of them. Alan Bursky was in a cast up to his waist through his whole childhood. My parents were divorced. Someone's father died. Someone's mother died. There was a flood. There was a fight. There was some trauma that got them to that table. And I always say that there are two kinds of comedians. There's the intrinsically funny person. That's like Howie Mandel and Elaine Boozler. And the example I use is David Brenner was walking down the street in New York City, and a manhole blew 25 feet into the air. And while it was up in the air, David said, "Heads." And that's an intrinsically funny person. He sees life and he reacts to it comedically. Then there are people who have learned if they say 7 words in a row and stop, the audience will laugh. They're technicians. Both are funny. I personally enjoy the intrinsically funny people.
Absolutely.
Better because, like Monica Piper and I, we have suddenly become this really good friends because she called me up one day and she said, "Look, I'm doing a one-woman show and I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to do it in your living room for you." And I said, "Just give me a minute so I can shove knitting needles in both eyes." So she came to my house and she did her one-woman show in my living room, and I kept throwing in lines, as she was talking. I'd say this, and when it was done, she said, "How was it?" I said, "It's wonderful."
Aww.
I was prepared to hate it. It's wonderful. And
it was on and off Broadway for a while, right?
It ran off Broadway for over a year.
Yeah. And
it was called Not That Jewish. And because of that, Not That Connection, of course, I told her to change the title. Because of that connection, we have learned that we have the same sense of humor. We see things exactly in the same viewpoint. And we call each other, nobody makes me laugh. Nobody, and so she makes me laugh. There are people that just make me laugh.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because it seems to me that back during the time when you were starting with the Comedy Store Players and starting stand-up, maybe it was because the business, the comedy club business was still in its infancy, that the performers were more supportive of one another. And even the Leno, Letterman, George Miller era, those guys hung out and lived in each other's cars and went to each other's homes on Thanksgiving. It seems like it was more fraternal. Now it's just like cutthroat.
Well, it's interesting because David Brenner said to me, "I don't understand this." He said, "In New York, we're like a family. We're supporting each other. And out here, it's more cutthroat." And I'll have to say, and Bo will hate me for saying it, but I have to say that it was because of Bo Capral, who was the most competitive human being on the face of the earth, that he set the tone of those years. He's a wonderful guy, and he's very talented. But I think back then, he was really a different person, and it was very competitive, until Alan Bursky said to me, "Look, it's not a race. We're not here, to see who beats who," and that kind of took the pressure off.
But it can feel like a finite goal that's only available to some. When you guys watched Jimmy Walker get that show, and then you watch Norman Lear take care of him and hire writers and make sure his stand-up was, and then Mitzi puts him in the prime position of the lineup. And then it's like, okay, who else is going to book a deal? Who's going to get on Carson? There were like specific things that some people were getting and some people were not getting. So it can seem less collaborative when there's only one person on stage at a time.
Well, yeah. And like I said, everyone thinks I should be headlining.
Right. About that same topic, Steve, I ran into Johnny Dark at a coffee shop, and he was a close friend of Letterman's, and Letterman would, I know he's holding his tongue.
You okay, Steve?
No, he's fine. But he was a close friend of Letterman's, and Letterman was always really good to his close friends by giving them pops on his show. And this was when Letterman announced he was going to retire. And I said, "So what do you think Letterman will be like without TV after he retires?" And he thought about it for a second, and he said, "Howard Hughes." That was so funny, but that wasn't the point of what I wanted to say. He said something which is a great philosophy. He said the hardest thing about show business is learning to deal with the success of your friends, which I thought was brilliant. And that really is. I mean, don't begrudge them. Everybody supported Leno when he started to make it. And I guess it sounds like the same for Jimmy Walker. But it takes somebody comfortable in his own skin to be able to do that.
But those people aren't comics. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, Elaine is Elaine's taken her energy and into animal rescue.
Oh, yeah.
And her, the heart of that woman is as big as this room.
Oh, yeah.
She would crawl on her hands and knees to save a dog someplace in Alaska.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't do that for my cousin.
But if you, take some of, you would, for some of the cousins, Steve.
Maybe Dee Dee.
Okay, for Dee Dee. It takes someone who can have some sort of passion outside of stand-up to find some sort of joy in something that isn't as competitive, I think is healthy. Right. And for you guys to write books and to have these other outlets for your creativity I think is really healthy, so that it's not always this sort of stage time jockeying for a spotlight.
That's a good point. What's your favorite kind of writing, Steve? Which kind is most satisfying to you?
I love writing alone. I loved writing the books. I wrote sitcom for years, and it was 8 guys in a room working on one joke for 4 hours until I wanted to kill myself. I remember I was on a show with Mary Willard. We were a team, and they literally, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they were still working on the same joke. And I said, "Excuse me for a minute." I went up to my office. I wrote 12 jokes. I threw it on the table. I said, "Pick a joke. Let's get out of here." It was a nightmare. So I love writing alone, and I love playwriting, because more than film writing, I find, because I'm dyslexic, I find film writing to be too big. You have to be big in film writing. You have to get on a plane and go to Georgia. In a play, you can do it in one room.
Yeah, if you write a joke, you can imagine the audience laughing at it too when you're writing for something that's going to be performed live, I'm guessing. Yeah,
but it's not even that. It's just the building those relationships in small places that's more appealing to me. And I've got 8 plays sitting in a drawer right here because when I thought, when I was done writing television, I thought, well, I'll write plays. That'll be easy. I'll just write plays. I should have just slammed my hand in this drawer.
While we're talking about your playwriting skills, a sad coincidence is your play Rest in Pieces, another great title, had a New York staged reading with Olympia Dukakis, who has just passed away recently in the last year or so.
Yeah, that play has had more stage readings, and it's had 2 productions, and Olympia Dukakis was in one, and here we go again.
Boy, if she knew you couldn't remember her name, she'd be mad.
No, I can't remember. And, I'm writing this thing for my act about I can't remember names. I can tell you the color of their hair. I can tell you what they were wearing. I know, I can describe their house. I know their car. And I said, that woman, she had blonde hair, and then her husband had an affair, and she left him, but then she came back because he was the only one who would take her craziness. Who was that? You mean Mom?
I think if you Google all the elements, it spits out the answer, right?
It doesn't work that way. I just can't remember the name. James Coburn, not James Coburn. And anyways, he's dead too.
James Coco.
They're all dead.
Jimmy Coco.
What? No. They're all funny. Dead. They're all...
Lee Marvin?
What?
You can't just keep saying names, Fritz.
No, James Coburn and Lee Marvin were often mistaken.
Oh, yeah, they are. So,
but James Coburn was wrong.
I want to talk. I don't know if Fritz has heard you talk about the parties at Fred and Mary's, but I think Fritz would enjoy hearing some of this stuff because he loves showbiz lore.
Well, we're talking about Fred Willard and his wife, Mary Willard, and they were the universal party givers in Los Angeles. And New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day, Fred's birthday, Mary's birthday, 4th of July. These were the parties. And I'm not talking about 15 people and cheese dip. I'm talking about 100 people, 150 people, and a caterer. And Mary was so special. She would write plays on the 4th of July that encompassed our history. And she would have all the children play the parts, all the children, so that they would learn about American history.
Wow.
She was just amazing. And every Christmas party was exactly the same every year for 30 years. And it went like this. You'd come, you'd have some hors d'oeuvres, and then you'd mill around outside, and you'd eat, and you'd joke, and then Mary would say, showtime. And Fred would get up and do something, and then Joanne Worley, who had been at the party the whole night, suddenly disappeared. And then all of a sudden, you'd find her outside tapping on the window. And Fred said, oh, look, it's Joanne Worley. And he'd let her in. And she said, Fred, I was just in the neighborhood, and I heard all these people singing. And so I thought I'd come in. He said, oh, do come in. She said, I hope you don't mind. I brought a piano player. And she'd go over and she'd do 15 minutes. And she'd sing. And I just adore that woman. And then we'd sing Christmas carols, the highlight being the 12 Nights of Christmas. But the big deal was 5 golden rings. If you had to do something funny on 5 golden rings. So Bob Perlow and I, we would always come up. So one year, Bob called me on my cell phone during that. He timed it, and it rang, and I went, hello, and he went, 5 golden over the phone. And the next year, I went into the kitchen, I got their vacuum cleaner, and I plugged it in. And when it came time to go 5, I came out with the vacuum cleaner on, and I started vacuuming. Going, 5 golden. It was like that.
She was as funny as he was. I was on jury duty with her one time, and it really made the week go fast. She was very funny. Oh
yeah, she was she had a heart as big as all outdoors. And when Mary passed away, I grieved more for Mary's passing than when my mother died. I really did. There were 250, 300 people at the funeral. It was just, and it was, Mary would pick the cream of the comedy world to come to the parties. So, sorry you weren't there, Fred.
Oh no, I was in. Fred used me in his Christmas show. He would do this Christmas show every year, and a couple of years he did it at the El Portal Theater, which is where I had my one-person show. And he would invite me just to come out and do a couple of Christmas weather jokes and then walk off. And he would sit in this throne, and they'd have all these odd characters. They had a great Donald Trump impersonator for the last couple. I remember that. But no, he had a long career, and they were lovely people.
They were truly lovely people, and those parties. I mean, everyone who was important in comedy was there, and Mary kept Fred's name on everybody's lips because of those parties.
That's so interesting.
They were amazing. They were just amazing. And I wrote about it in Memoir of a Nobody.
Yeah, that's why. That's what it's. You have to read that book.
I want to read it.
His book is that's the first book I read, and then this weekend I read Point of Pines, and so Steve's one of my favorite authors. But I want to talk about now. You have a YouTube show and a podcast. So can you talk about those projects?
No, it's not a podcast. It's a YouTube talk show.
Oh, so it's all one thing. So there's no difference between Talking a Blue Streak and the.
Oh well, yes. The podcast was on my website.
Okay.
But I think the last time I did an interview was in 1947.
Okay.
I haven't done that because there's just so much I can do.
Right. And so now you're doing Let Me Say This About That, and it's on Set of Sales Network on YouTube. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm retired. I sold my house in LA. I bought this house, this I'm writing about that in my act too. I bought a big house in the desert. I knew it was big because when I was standing at the baggage claim area, they told me that the gift shop was down the street. You know, that's a big house.
It's a big house.
Yeah, it's a big house. And I was retired and happily retired, you know, and I got a phone call out of the blue. Hi, Steve, we'd like to give you a talk show on the YouTube network. And I went, really? And they said, yeah. I said, well, you know, I moved out of LA. Don't worry, we can do it from your house. I said, hey, listen, perfect. I don't have to leave the house. You know, when between Amazon and the Bank of America's direct deposit, I haven't left the house in 35 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I could get a heart and lung machine from Amazon. That's all I need. So I do this talk show, and to my utter amazement, it's become hugely popular. Our last show got 8,000 views, over 8,000 views. And I said, who are these people? And it's just been great. Now Fritz is going to do it on the 18th.
I can't wait.
I hear he's good.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, so it's great. So
That's
you
my negative childhood coming in.
No.
it's really fun. I watched a few and it's really fun. So how do you decide who to talk to? It seems like you've been picking people that you are simpatico with and that you have wonderful stories that experiences to share.
No, I'm only interviewing my friends.
Okay.
That's all you know, and I have literally a couple of hundred people I can call on. And if anybody that I don't know ever comes on, then I may go into cardiac arrest. I don't know.
So it's that familiarity that makes it feel more like a conversation than a show.
Like Mark Summers was on this last week, and Mark and I had not been friends because he came to the Comedy Store after me.
He's had a great career.
Oh my God, we should all have a great career like.
Mm-hmm.
And when my play was in Delaware, he was in Pennsylvania, and he called me and said, I'd like to come down and see the rehearsal. I said, sure. And that artwork was done by one of the Prostate, you know, one of my books is called Take My Prostate, Please.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done by one of the Prostate group websites, which I thought was wonderful. And I said, look, if I looked that good, I'd be happy. So
You do. That. You look that good.
I'm going to throw some names at you. I want you to react to them, okay? Briefly.
All right.
Mitzi Shore.
Love her. She gave me my career. You know, Mitzi was living in a little house. She had the big house on Doheny, and then they sold that. She was incapacitated, and I went to visit her. And I said to her, everything I have, I owe to you, and I will not let them forget.
You're not the only person that said that. Robin Williams.
Robin was great. You know, he lived with Elaine Boozler, and I pulled her aside one day and I said, Elaine, get him some deodorant. He was, you know, nature man, but it was pretty strong. And, you know, Robin was unique. Mitzi said to me, I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was in La Jolla and I saw his picture on the wall and I said, who is that? And Mitzi said, oh, that's our next star. Oh, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to be the next star.
Right.
Richard Pryor.
Richard, you know, I wasn't close with Richard. We were friendly. We said hello to each other because I was always, you know, too shy to become close to him. But between Richard and Jimmy, see, Jimmy started it, and then he brought Richard in, and Richard really opened up, you know, because Richard had the name already. So Richard really opened up the world to comedy.
Paul Mooney.
Totally insane. Totally insane. Loved him. Made me so uncomfortable because he was insane. And yet he always treated me beautifully, always, you know, liked me and was but I couldn't get close to him.
He was
No.
scary to me. He was mean.
No, he was a very scary guy. He was mean on stage and off stage.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think he wanted to be imposing. I think it made him feel powerful.
Yeah. But very few people knew that, I think he wrote the majority of Live on the Sunset Strip Richards'
Yeah, people.
Red Suit Special.
Comedy people,
Yeah.
I think, do
Yeah,
give him credit for that. Hey, we promised, Steve, and you may have zero interest, so maybe listen to music while this is happening. But we promised a tour of the lunchboxes that we've just installed on the front of our table. So
Look at the time.
I guess starting at the upper left, that's a Happy Days lunchbox, and then we have a BG.
When did you start collecting these? How long?
Well, my friend Mark Davis gave me, and he's Richard Cheese, Lounge Against the Machine. He gave me the Bee Gees lunchbox that he found it for like $1.99. He knew that I loved the Bee Gees. And then once you have a couple of things, people think that you collect and they give them to you. So then I started.
Oh, with Henry Winkler.
What's that?
I went to college with Henry.
Oh, that's right. He went to
Oh, my
Emerson.
God, he went to Emerson,
good.
too. I
Were you in
forgot
plays
that.
together?
No, he was a year ahead of
A
me.
year ahead. Okay. So let me see. So we've got, Happy Days, the Bee Gees, and then Flipper. And that I loved
wow,
Flipper.
that's got to be so
I
rare.
wanted a dolphin, and my parents were very strict, no dolphin. And then Bobby Sherman. We have Bobby Sherman. And this one I love. It's Chuck Connors on Cowboy in Africa, which ran for 1 year, but somehow they had the lunchbox deal sealed. But I love Chuck Connors from Rifleman.
Yeah.
He just walked down the street shooting.
I had that gun with a big round cocking mechanism.
Yeah, right.
And then we have, what's next to it? Is it
E.T.?
Family Affair? Oh, that's right, Steve. E.T. Family Affair.
Wow.
The Mrs. Beasley doll with Buffy. And then we have the Mouseketeers and Waltons, Little House on the Prairie, E.T., and the Brady
Can I
Bunch.
just say-
Yeah.
Can I say one thing about the Waltons?
Oh, yeah, please.
I absolutely could not relate to that family. The families that I related to were the Munsters and the Addams family.
Right, I read that in your book.
I love those people. The Waltons, Father Knows Best, Donna Reed. I go, what the hell? Where's the fighting? Where's the blood?
You mean
Where's the blood?
you didn't have a sister saying goodnight to you from the house next door? Good night, Bobby, or
Good night,
whatever.
Steve Boy. So is that it? Did I cover everything? Let me see the wide
that
shot
was
one more
really
time.
good.
And
You ought to
E.T.
run that on eBay just to get I think you could.
I have more lunchboxes in my office. We can swap them in and out every week, and eagle-eyed viewers can
Hey,
point out the
Steve,
differences.
thank you so much. Honestly.
My pleasure.
It was a
I love
joy.
it. You could also bring lunch to the office.
I could.
Good point.
When you come, Steve, I'll have lunch. So here come the closing credits. We would love for you to join us online on Instagram and Twitter, where we are at MediaPathPod, and on Facebook, where we are MediaPath Podcast. You can find full episodes with all kinds of bonus visual content on our YouTube channel, MediaPath Podcast. We would love to know what media you have been enjoying. You can contact us at our social media or email us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com. We want to thank our wonderful guest, Steve Bluestein. Our team includes Dina Friedman, Francesco Demanda, John Maddox, Sharon Bellio, Bill Filipiak, Thomas Hubble, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Planker, here with Fritz Coleman, and we will see you along the media path. What else, Fritz?
Well, if you enjoyed this episode of Media Path, it would help us a great deal to be a little more discoverable by potential new listeners if you leave us a quick review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're new here and this is your first time with us, please check out our back catalog. You'll find all kinds of binge-worthy stuff, including our most recent interview with the great Steve Bluestein, Gary Puckett, the Cowsills, Keith Morrison, Henry Winkler, you name it, we have them all. Thank you for spending an hour with us, and we would be overjoyed if you took a moment to share your thoughts with us or recommend us to a friend. Be safe. Thanks for listening.